Mr Speaker.
Iain Lees-Galloway.
Mr Speaker, I am getting thoroughly sick of hearing government members stand up in this House and tell us that they support the intent of a bill and then vote against it. Because we actually have a system. This is breaking news for the members in the government benches. We have a system in this parliament that deals with exactly that. This is the first reading. At the first reading, it is our decision. Do we agree with the broad intent of this bill? If the answer to that is yes, which I heard from Barbara Kuriger, she supports the intent of this bill. Not quite sure what Joe Hayes said, I never am. And Paul Foster-Bell, he told us that this was a bill worthy of Parliament's consideration. Well, if it's worthy of Parliament's consideration, vote for it at first reading, send it to Select Committee so that we can consider all the issues that you've raised, so that we can listen to the officials, so that we can listen to the experts, so that we can listen to, I'm sure, the thousands of people who would want to come and submit on this bill. But the truth is, and the members opposite know it, is that they don't support equal pay. They don't support any moves to make our workplaces fairer for women. That is the truth of it, because if it was anything different, they would be voting for this legislation. Now, Barbara Kuriger told us that she's voting against this bill because it doesn't solve the pay gap. This bill will not solve the pay gap, so Barbara Kuriger is going to vote against it. Of course it doesn't solve the pay gap, but if we apply that test to everything that would make some step towards reducing the pay gap, we wouldn't vote for anything. You wouldn't have even gone into the pay equity settlement if you thought that that wasn't going, because it's not going to solve the pay gap. It's going to make a tiny, tiny dent in the pay gap, but it is a step in the right direction, which is why it was the right thing to do, and it's why voting for this legislation is the right thing to do. So don't come to this House and tell us that you support the ideals behind this bill, because you don't, because you're not voting for it. You don't support equal pay. You don't support better rights for women in the workplace, because if you did, you would be voting for this bill. There is an old saying, sir, and that is that he's found the new word. He's a clever boy. He's found the new word, and he's throwing it around as much as he can. So there is an old saying, and that is that sunlight is the best disinfectant. And that's exactly what this bill seeks to do. That's all this bill seeks to do, is to collect some data so that we have a better idea of what is driving the pay gap, and that we might be able to get employers and people who are going through the employment process, who are interviewing candidates, who make the offers, the pay offers to successful candidates, to actually stop and think about some of those unconscious biases that do exist. It's simply a mechanism of getting us to stop and think about that. That's all. And yes, it is part of the progress that we have to make towards closing the pay gap. It's not a difficult thing to do. And I find it even more disingenuous than the approach that the National Party is taking towards their vote on this bill, for them to come here, for Paul Foster-Bell to come here and say he is worried about privacy breaches if we collect information about what men get paid and what women get paid. This from a government that wants to collect the names and personal details of victims of sexual violence. They are saying that they are concerned about the potential privacy breaches of collecting information about what people get paid. Well, there's a word for that, sir. And I don't want you to kick me out, so I'm not going to say it. But we all know what it is, and we all know that's what they are when they come to the House and make claims like this. Sir, I've got 1 minute left. I just want to say this, because other members have mentioned pay equity. The pay equity settlement is the result of campaigning and work over a number of years by unionised workers. It has not come about from the largesse of the government opposite. They were backed into a corner by a very savvy, very comprehensive union campaign that gave them no option but to settle. And I want to congratulate Christine Bartlett and the unions involved in that pay equity settlement. But you know what? I want to see more not the legislation that the government is bringing to stop that happening in the future. I want to see more settlements that make sure that not just women, but all working people get decent pay, get paid what they're worth, a fair day's pay for a fair day's work. That's what we stand for on this side of the House, and that's why we're voting for this bill. They don't, they won't, and they know it.
Thank
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.